Welcome to a quick tutorial on how to simply place power lines into your map using some Giants Editor scripting tools and a prefab pack that I just released. The first thing you'll need to do is head to some links that I will provide in the bio. Number one, the link to the prefab pack on my itch.io is rowcropspecial.itch.io. The second is some scripting tools from FarmerBoysModding that were just released this week. The only thing that you have to do when you go to my itch.io page is click on the American Powerline FS25 prefab kit. That will take you over to the download page with a nice description of what I put together and then a download link. When you click the download link, it should go straight into your downloads folder. FarmerBoysModding is a little bit different. I don't own this site, but I use this site quite frequently for some tutorials and some scripting tools that are offered by this group. The very top link as of recording this video is the FS25 updated scripts. I'm gonna click on that. Now you do have to have an account with this website, so go ahead and create one, and then at the bottom of this posting on the forum you can click a download link to download all of these scripts. So you can see down here the FS25 script versions. There are individual tutorials for each script provided on this forum post if you need them. Now there are a couple different spots that you can install your scripts. The probably most common place that you'll see it done is on the C drive in the program files for Giant Software, the editor version that you're currently using, and then the scripts folder. You do need to give admin permissions to input these scripts, but that's pretty simple. Once the scripts are put into that folder, when you navigate to your scripts drop-down menu in Giants Editor and go to shared scripts, you should see all of those ones that you just put in there. It will not be in user scripts, that's in a different folder. Now I've switched over to an empty mod map file so that it's a little easier to see what I'm doing in here, but you can see here that my scripts are still the same. So when I go to shared scripts and select fence power placement 25, here's what it's going to do. I'll click on that and it'll open up a UI panel, and it's also going to create an empty transform group over here. Well, not empty, it has a few children tied to it, namely the wire fence node and the fence placement. Underneath fence placement, there's a couple more children in the sense of post object and placed objects. If anyone here remembers some of the old fence and power line placement scripts from the FS19 or FS22 days, this new script here is the evolution of that. And it's really simple. I'm going to show you how to use it. The first thing we need to do though is get the power line prefab into this map file. So what I'm going to do is navigate to my downloads folder, and when you download my prefab kit, it's going to come as a zip file, so we have to extract all, and then you'll have it in a folder like this. This file directory is set up like a prefab that you would download from Giants directly. I don't plan to upload this to Giants because I don't own the model, but you'll have a shapes file, an i3D file, and then you'll have a textures folder. So what I would do is hit Control C or come here and hit copy, whatever you want to do. And then go to your mods folder wherever you have your map saved. Mine's just sample mod map. And then I'm going to go Maps US and Textures. I like to put i3D objects into my textures folder. The next step I'll do is, you can see here we have textures and then another textures folder. I will take the contents of this texture folder here and bring them back to the overall textures folder. We'll do that real quick. Just hit Control X, go back one spot, and hit V, Control V, delete this old textures folder. And that's not quite the final step. We still need to go in here and edit the i3D in Notepad++. Now here you can see we still have that textures / there. That means it's going to another folder within the textures folder. We deleted that so we can get rid of this little tagline right here. Once we're done with that, hit Control S or come up here and hit save. Close out of Notepad++, and you're just about ready to import this into your map. There's a couple ways you can do that. You can go File, Import. What I like to do is just drag and drop. And you can see here that if I select one of these simple pulls and I press F on the keyboard, it will focus on that single item. I can do it again and again and again, and again. This prefab kit comes with 5 different power poles, and then it comes with 2 different power lines. The power lines will be grayed out because they're hidden right now. If I just click on that transform group and hit Shift H, those power lines will reappear. I give you 2 options in this kit, a 50 meter and a 70 meter. These are set up with the appropriate transform groups to work with this fence and power line placement script. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to put down a spline. We're going to put objects into the fence power objects transform group and go from there. So like I was saying earlier, the first thing that we're going to do is simply create a spline, and then I'm going to show you a useful script tool that comes in that script package to snap that spline to the terrain so you don't have to worry about finagling spline control points. All I'm going to do up here is go to create and hit spline. That'll drop it at 0, 0, 0. I'm going to hit Control B and then click. And while I'm holding that click button, that left click button, I can drag that spline around. I'll select this spline again and hit F, and that'll bring me in here so I can grab the endpoint. And then from the endpoint, I will edit the spline, basically add more points. So I'll hit Control B again and left click. And then each time I want to add a point, I'll hit the insert button. I'm going to do a big stretch on that one to kind of illustrate what we're talking about here. You'll see the spline kind of disappears in the terrain there, whereas right here, it floats way above the terrain. That's where this spline CSV creator tool comes into place. So what we're going to do is select this spline, go to scripts, shared scripts, and click spline CSV creator. As we look at the spline on the screen now, you can see in between each red control point, there's some numbers here. It goes from 6.79 to 35 to 63, pretty uneven numbers. What we can do with the CSV panel is we can set the distance between those control points. So the tighter number we have, the smaller number we have, that means the control points are going to be closer together. So though the closer together they are, the more accurately they follow the terrain. Whereas if you have it more spread out, it's better for things like leveling terrain and things like that. We can get into that in a separate video. For this video, I'll just do 10, and I'll hit Create CSV. Down at the console, it tells us that we created that new object and it was placed in the CSV data folder. That CSV data folder is going to be right in your map directory. However you have it structured, it's going to put it in there. You'll see it CSV data. We have this i3D object in here that we can now drag and drop into there. And you can already see this new spline follows the terrain perfectly. So if I hide this old spline by hitting Control H, clicking off of it, you can see that we follow this terrain to a T. Yes, it cuts through there a little bit, but those control points are just in the terrain, not way below it or way above it. So this is the spline that we're going to use. So we can either collapse or close out of the CSV creator at this point. I'm going to delete my old spline. I don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to open up the fence power placement script next. When I open up the fence and power line placement script, it will give me a UI panel here, and it will also create a transform group that has a couple children transform groups held within it, namely the wire fence node and the fence placement transform group that we use to run the script. We also put our post object in there and our spline in there. So what I'll do is I'll first grab the spline, use my middle mouse button to drag it down into the fence placement portion of it, and then I'm going to select a pole. So like I said earlier, you can select that pole and hit F to focus in on it. And you can take your pick of 5. Either ones with transformers, a more simple pole, or a simple pole with some added little touches there. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to do simple pole 02 here. Since I chose simple pole 02, all I have to do is drag this down into the post object. I'll hover over that post object and drop it in below that. I also need to drag in my wire of choice into the wire fence node. I just chose 70 meter for this example. And then we're pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to jump into where the spline is and show you how to set some parameters next. Now that we're back up at the spline, we still have all of our stuff set up in the transform group portion of it. I'm going to open back up my script UI panel and input some parameters here. Our post distance is usually going to be what our wire distance is. So in this case, it's going to be 70 meters. Next thing we can do is I'm going to skip over just for simplicity, the stay upright, random spline order, random placement. If you want to know what those do, Wrigley's Rule has some really great forum posts on how to use this script in a lot more detail than I'm going to provide in this. All I want to show you is how to get a straight line of power lines put down. So we'll skip over those. The next number is the number of wire nodes. The way to find that is to open up your simple poll or whatever poll you choose and count how many transform groups you have in there. Obviously here we have 6. Now the wire and fence length here, that's the next one, the wire length. You can see here our wire here is 70 meters. It's good to go just below that, like instead of 70, maybe 69.9. That way if there's any differentiation in the terrain, it gives it some wiggle room so that when they meet up, those nodes meet up, there's no gaps in there. So just go just below that. So if you had a 51, I'd do like 49.9. Start there and maybe work your way down or up. So I'm going to do 69.9 right there. Now that we have this set up with those 3 numbers, all we have to do is select our fence placement transform group and hit create fence/powerline. I'll close this down and you can see here that we have a really nice group of power poles set up. You can see here that when we go to our bulb there, that's where our node is set up at. Those wires come together really nicely. There's no overlap, there's no overextension or anything like that. It's just perfect. You can see here it follows the terrain, shoots off next to the other power line. It's really great. The only thing this doesn't do is if you had crisscross, like another one going that way, you wouldn't be able to connect those lines. Not that I know of yet. What I'm going to do is make another video of using these same power poles inside of Blender to make a more complex network of power lines. Much better that way. Looks a lot prettier. You can get some curvature in the lines, things like that. Blender's just the way to go. But in terms of getting a quick and dirty straight line run of power poles, this is the fastest, easiest way to do it by using some scripting tools and any prefab pack that is created for you, like the one that I provided. So yeah, that's it.